Chair Tanaka,
Here.
Mayor Ku,
Here.
Councilmember Lowing. For the record, 2 present.
Okay, great. So today is Tuesday, December 12th, and the first item on the agenda is public comment. Are there any members of the public who want to speak?
Chair Tanaka, we do not have any requests to speak.
Okay, so we're now on our first action item, discussion regarding state and federal legislative advocacy and discussion and recommendations on the annual legislative guidelines and legislative platform. Does staff have a staff report?
Yes, good evening, Chair Tanaka and Mayor Ku sitting in the committee today. My name is Chantel Cotton Gaines, Deputy City Manager, and I have with me Mr. Nicolo DeLuca from Townsend Public Affairs. The item before you this evening is to get a recommendation on the legislative guidelines, which we're also calling our legislative platform, to the full City Council, and we'll also just very high level give you a timeline of what we're expecting for this upcoming legislative year. This item, in a deeper conversation with the City Council, we're looking to go on January 22nd. So that would be the date proposed after the Policy and Services recommendation today. So we met with the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee, one of our first meetings, and walked through these guidelines, and the Ad Hoc Committee also recommended moving these forward. I'm going to just very briefly go over what you have. This starts on packet page 6. So just, I will run through some of the changes. We always.
Can the clerk, as you do that, also share the screen so we can see it as well?
We always do this item as track changes, just so that you can see the changes year over year. So that it's intentionally redlined in case you are concerned. The first is the foundational principles portion of this, in which we've had the 4 foundational principles in our legislative guidelines for years. We just added a little contextual information so that there's more explanation of what they mean. So that's what you see as the changes on packet page 6. Going into the next part of the legislative guidelines, we added a few in the transportation section, a few in climate and environment, and we moved some from other parts of the document over into the financial section, and we renamed a section to governance, transparency, and human resources. And we moved some items. There was a piece at the end of the legislative guidelines called other, and we felt like those were a little too disparate in topics, and so we moved them into appropriate categories. And
I just want to say one thing, which is since it's a small meeting today, as you see issues, feel free to light up and ask questions or make comments, okay?
Awesome, thank you. And I'm breezing through these purposefully, knowing that you may have specific questions and we can just go to that portion. And the items in the housing section are pretty consistent with what we've had before, just further clarification as well. And public safety, those are not new items either, with the exception of one related to fire services. So with that, that sort of gives you a high level of the buckets that we have for the legislative guidelines. And I will let Mr. DeLuca speak a little bit about the timeline in Sacramento going forward, and then we can discuss both. Any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor and Councilmember Nicolo DeLuca, Townsend Public Affairs. Good to see you all again. I will quickly go over some key dates in Sacramento, and then as Ms. Gaines said, happy to answer any questions that you all may have. So January 3rd, the legislature comes back. January 10th, the governor will propose his budget. February 5th, the new pro tem in the Senate gets sworn in. And at the end of February is when bill introductions, it's a bill introduction deadline. I think the key date for all of us is January 10th, when the governor proposes his budget. As you all know from past years, when he puts his budget forward, that officially kicks off the subcommittee and committee hearing process to discuss his budget, and then hear where the Senate and the Assembly both stand on that. I was fortunate enough today to be in a meeting with one of the governor's top staffers. We did discuss the budget. There have been some preliminary numbers thrown out from the Legislative Analyst Office about what a deficit would be looking like. Certainly that's not the number from the Department of Finance. However, we want to maintain our strategy of working on some local projects to submit to our delegation for consideration if the budget process isn't as bad as could be discussed right now. So with that, happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much for your time.
Okay, great. Just want to ask my colleague if she has any thoughts, questions, comments?
Thank you. The only thing I have here is on page 10, which has to do with the third bullet down. I was wondering, does this bullet here also, is it pretty clear that we need funding, not just for fire, but also emergency services for training and response capabilities?
Thank you for that question, Mayor Ku. We would take that one as emergency training, but if we wanted to make that clearly delineated, we could put that in here as well.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure. So it's not really departmentalized, right? It's more
The service,
the service. Okay,
yes.
yeah.
That is the way that we proposed it, but if we wanted to make that very clearly say emergency services, we can make
Yeah,
that
I
change.
just want to make sure that each of our police, fire, as well as emergency services has adequate funding for training and support.
Yes. We can make that change, that if it comes along with the motion, yes.
And then for Mr. For Mr. DeLuca, on January 10th, when the governor's budget is proposed, where do you see it at? Where is his priorities with his budget planning?
Absolutely. That is a great question. So out of respect to his office, they're still a little close to the vest on what he's going to be proposing in January. However, he's been very, very clear about addressing the unhoused. That's been a commitment of his over the years. He's also been kind of very staunch about making sure the state's reserves are intact. So we always have those rainy day funds. And if needed, work with the legislature to declare some type of fiscal emergency, just so you could access those funds. That's something that's on the table, but we'll hear more from him about that on the 10th. He's also obviously very passionate about, in March, his 2 mental health propositions about ensuring that there's more funding for capital and beds, and then seeking the funding to tweak the billionaires tax. So he's very passionate about mental health, and we expect the same type of focus. He's also, over the past few years, there's been a tendency to be supportive of public safety, primarily competitive grant programs. The city was a successful recipient of the retail theft grant opportunity. So there has been some desire to see those funds increase. I think what's really going to happen, though, is he'll outline his priorities. And as we get closer to February, March, and April, and have a better understanding of where the tax returns are coming, how the stock market is doing, then we'll see in May if there's funding for some of the more kind of pet projects. There is legislation that's currently alive for a housing bond and also a climate bond. So again, this wouldn't be general fund dollars, this would be a bond. So there could very well be an opportunity to take some of the very successful state programs on climate and for housing and just push those to bonds. That way to help kind of take off some of the pressure on the general fund. That's an opportunity that he has at his fingertips. One of the items that we're very interested in, and I know the council is too, is if you remember about 2 years ago, there was a lot of federal funds for transportation, grade separation, things of that nature. Want to make sure that those funds stay intact because those are funds that benefit the city and the region. And if need be, obviously fighting to help ensure that those are protected. Last comment, then I'll stop talking. Something that we want to do is working with the administration and you, Mayor, is really outlining what our top priorities are and what we want to make sure that the state either keeps intact or protects. So our delegation and leadership knows exactly where we stand. So after the 22nd, excited to be working on something like that, where it's very clear on behalf of the city of Palo Alto what our priorities are. State, these are very important programs to us. Oh, and then by the way, here are some other important programs that we have.
Thank you for that. So I guess the city is going to be doing their priority setting on the 29th, right? So you'll find out by then.
We'll find out that.
What is the state's reserves right now?
That is a great question. Let me get back to you on that because I don't want to screw up the number. I remember hearing like 23 billion, but I don't want to. Let me double check that.
Yeah.
Though I know what they're projecting the deficit as of right now would be more than what the rainy day reserves are.
And when you said that they have a fiscal emergency policy that they're going to develop, the emergency is if should it happen, they're going to dip into the reserves.
Exactly. So as much as the words emergency, kind of like, oh, like, ooh, emergency, it's more of a process to access those rainy day funds.
Okay.
But that also takes clearly the desire of the governor and of course the desire of the legislature to do so.
Do you have any idea what his, the governor's policies and programs he's planning to produce for addressing the unhoused?
So over the years, so first, Care Court has been a very important program of the governor and working into its second iteration. So the first round of counties have already been in the program. The second round of counties are coming underway. I'll get back to you as to when Santa Clara County is going to be eligible for the Care Court program. So that's one. There's been a lot of excitement, obviously, about the Home Key program, and there's been some desire to keep that going. Of course, that is capital dollars to help address the unhoused. There's also the HAP program, HHAP program, which has been around for about 7 years, which are direct allocations to the big cities, the counties, and the continuums of care. There was a commitment last year to fund the HAP program at $1 billion. And there's a lot of support in the legislature to ensure that also happens. So there's a lot of funding on the services side and on the direct allocation to municipality side. And then on the capital side, primarily it's the Home Key program. There has been some discussion on the affordable housing world about more funding for the MHP program, multi-housing program. I don't have any concrete details to share yet now as to what the governor proposes on affordable housing, but from the advocates I know in the affordable housing space, there's still desire for more funding for capital on the affordable housing side. The multifamily housing program, MHP program, is one of the ones that they speak about the most.
Do you see that the unhoused part will have any connections to the mental health funding?
Absolutely. The governor's done a really, really good job of tying unhoused, mental health, substance abuse, all looping that together. And that's also what Proposition 1 has a lot of the funding for that too.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thanks.
There's
Thank
really been a big shift about when you address the unhoused, some parts housing, some parts services, some parts mental health, some parts chemical abuse treatment. So,
And if I may, and also recognizing, addressing those who are about to become unhoused and then keeping them housed. So I would love to see how that program comes to fruition and how the dollars are going to be allocated to each jurisdiction. Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Let's see. Does the clerk know if there's anyone that wants to speak on this item?
We have no public speakers.
Okay, so we're going to close public comment for this item. Yeah, I've heard about the massive deficit that the state's going to have, which is really interesting because there's a pretty big swing from the surplus. So how do you think this is going to impact the city, Palo Alto?
Councilmember, that's a great question. Until we see what the exact programs are that would be proposed for a reduction or a freeze, we don't have that exact information quite yet. But certainly there's been a lot of funding from the state to municipalities such as Palo Alto that are very important. That's why earlier I talked about the transportation funding. Those are critical dollars that the city benefits from, grade separation, making sure the Caltrain and what have you. So that's number one, is a lot of the capital dollars that the city would access and apply for. The second is also what type of funding mechanism might be out there to help bridge the gap and what its impacts could be on local government. Certainly redevelopment is a thing of the past, but in years past, as Governor Brown did, obviously he got rid of redevelopment to cover that massive hole. So I think what we need to be prepared of is working with the administration, the city manager and the deputy city managers, identifying any city sources of revenue that could be susceptible to any type of state changes and making sure those are protected.
And how much for the current fiscal year, how much do we get from the state?
Off the top of my head, I do not know that, but
The
I'm
staff
happy to
know?
find that out.
We'll follow up with that information.
Okay. So
Actually, it's actually a more complex question because there's a whole variety of funding sources, whether it be tax allocations or special grants. Was there a particular area of concern?
well, I'm just trying to figure like of our budget, so we have about $1 billion budget, some of it we take from our budget stabilization reserve, some of it we get as revenue, and some of it we get from the state. And I'm just wondering, how exposed are we? Because I can imagine, unlike the federal government, which can print money, the state can't. So they would either have to go in debt or they would give us less. And both are possibilities. So I'm just trying to think of how much exposure our city has. So is it like, if it's like less than 1% or less than like 0.5%, then maybe we don't have to worry about it too much. But if it's, a significant part of our budget, then we need to worry.
Historically, as issues like this have arisen, we typically see some, what's the right term? Manipulation of allocation methods that will occur at the state. So yeah, I think it would be difficult for us to anticipate really even in any quantitative manner what that exposure is. I think there is always exposure, and depending on how drastically the state chooses to address their issue by taking from local governments. There have been prior legislative restrictions on the state's ability to do that. So at this point, I think based on experience and certainly invite others to chime in, we would see it coming. And so we would be able to advise the council pretty early if there is any movement that suggests we would be directly impacted.
Just to chime in on that, just as the city manager said, so keeping in mind the governor's proposal comes out January 10th, then that kicks off the parade of subcommittee hearings, committee hearings, responses back from the legislature, and then of course going all the way down to the May revise. So as the city manager said, we'd love to get some of that information to you all before about what we're hearing, and then the protection of funds, whether it's ERAF or VLF or what have you, to make sure what the city is getting, and of course, usually it's in tandem with what counties are getting, remains protected. Or if heaven forbid there's a proposal out there, then how do we go out there and push back very aggressively?
Okay. So I have a similar question on the federal level, but do we have any idea of how much money we get from the federal level?
Get happy to.
Yeah, there I would say any potential exposure we would feel if, again, there were similar pressures from the feds to divert funds would be on grant programs. And so once again, that's where we should be able to anticipate any significant or immediate impacts. And at this point, we have heard no indications that there's any clawback of grant programs.
Okay. So I know, it's kind of hard to tell what the Fed's going to do, and they could print money. So and they have, right? So what's your anticipation on the federal level? Do you see them, we've had relatively high interest rates, and we see countries like China not buying our debt anymore. So I can imagine they're going to try to lower the debt, but it could be kind of hard because I would think that there has to be a market for it, right? And as China's trying to divest themselves from this, I wonder, like what does your crystal ball say in terms of how's federal spending going to do? So I guess they could keep printing money. That's an option, and they've seemed to have no
My
problem doing that.
crystal ball is a little bit more myopic, and the federal government, as you know, they had the temporary extension from avoiding the shutdown, but they've got a decision to make by January 19th on the various budget elements. In addition, that the House needs to also pick a speaker. We're rolling into a presidential election. So there's going to be a lot of, I mean this respectfully, you're going to hear a lot of different comments coming from the federal government. We're not anticipating any sweeping changes due to, number one, they've got to make sure that they avoid a government shutdown. And there's a couple of the spending bills that they've already adopted. They need to adopt the rest. Number two, in the Congress, they need to pick a permanent speaker. And then number three, with the presidential year, traditionally you see not as much activity as in years past.
So, do you know relative from the state versus federal, where do we get more money from? Is it, I assume the state, but I don't know if anyone here knows.
It would be from the state. Again, at the federal level, or actually even in both, the big dollar figures that we'd be wanting to keep our eyes on most closely are project-specific grants. And definitely, we have more going with the state at this point rather than with the federal government.
And what we're trying to do in terms of, it's winter's coming up, and last year we had flooding. Hopefully this year we don't, but the Chaucer Bridge, I know we're going to have the little scooper there to pick up the debris, but what about actually fixing it for real? I mean, in terms of where does that funding come from in terms of trying to fix that?
Well, in terms of the Pope Chaucer Bridge, that's a project being led by the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority. So from the city's perspective, and that's really a funding program in process. From the city's perspective, we've got a number of state allocations that, again, there's always the potential to be at risk, but I think we're in pretty good position and confidence that we are spending in, and we've been receiving commitments from the state to keep that project moving forward.
So, so that project is fully funded, and it's really just, getting the engineers and people to build it, or is there funding that we have to get?
In terms of the Newell Road Bridge and
well, I was talking about the Chaucer Bridge, actually.
Chaucer Bridge is again a ongoing project, still in development with funding yet to be finalized.
So I think in terms of priorities, I think that should be a really high priority for us to secure money for that, because a lot of people last year, and hopefully not this year, but a lot of people last year got flooded in our city, in the Crescent Park area, and we need to take care of the people in our city. That's really important. And so getting funding for that bridge and letting that project go full steam ahead is important. So in terms of your red lines here, where would that go in the list of stuff? Where would that go in terms of trying to really put the pedal to the metal and try to push for funding for the Chaucer Bridge?
We typically are not that specific on a specific project in your legislative guidelines, as it is broad direction. And currently there is an item in here that does cover it. This is on packet page 8, the second bullet point down. So this would be in the climate and environment section. There's one that says provides opportunities for staff in partnership with the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority and other regional stakeholders to advance efforts to improve the creek's watershed and floodplain.
Okay.
So that one is all encompassing of what Mr. Shikata referenced, of what us really prioritizing, that those bridge replacement projects are very important, and funding opportunities to take advantage of them as they come.
Okay. Well, I think our consultant here kind of heard me, so I don't know if are there opportunities coming up where we could try to get this bridge funded, because I don't think we want, I don't know if you heard, but we're going to position a scooper out there. What do you call it? Backhoe, something like that, to kind of scoop out in front of because the bridge is kind of narrow and it kind of clogs up a lot. Which, so I guess it's a temporary fix, but do you know of programs or opportunities for us to try to secure funding to get this fixed for real?
I'd love to get with our grants team. Alex Gibbs is our grants manager, to do a kind of forensic look at all the different funding opportunities. And obviously working closely with city staff, identifying those and determining the best path forward.
And
Yeah.
I just really want to be clear, Councilmember Chair, that we are not in a position to unilaterally seek grants for the project, because under agreement with San Francisco Creek, which includes Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, and other agencies, that the Joint Powers Authority is the lead agency there.
Okay, I understand. But I think we pay your bill, right? So at least from the Palo Alto perspective, the other cities could have their own consultants, but at least since you represent us, I think for one, we would it's our duty to make sure that the people of our city don't get flooded again. And so I think it should be a really high priority that we try to secure funding for that bridge as soon as possible so that people in Crescent Park don't have to, worry. I mean, I heard stories last winter where people some people's houses got a foot of water inside of it, right? And they're still, even a year later trying to work it out. And, so to me, this needs to be a super high priority. I don't think we can just idly sit by another year and another possible flooding. Especially, I think, people pay quite a bit of taxes in our city. And so they expect, the least they could probably expect is not get flooded, right? Especially when we know the cause of the flood and it happens like quite regularly. So I think it's important that we really try to focus on this. So maybe this is not the right red line to do, but wherever you can, if you could do that, I think that'd be great. Even if there's a glimmer of hope of something like this coming down the pike, that'd be great. So that maybe that could be telegraphed to some of the people that got flooded and affected last time. Okay, I want to see if my colleague had additional question, comments, thoughts.
No, no, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, great. And let's see. Oh, actually, I have one last thing. What do you think the biggest risk factors are from the federal side that we as a city should think about?
That is a really good question. Do you mind saying that again?
So the biggest risk factors from the federal side, right? So the state, we know the hemorrhaging money. So we know that that's a pretty known. The federal government is a little bit different because they could print money, right? So, and they seem to have no problem doing that. So, but then that causes inflation. But I'm just trying to think of, from the big picture point of view, what should we think about, or what should we as representative cities be thinking about in terms of, the kind of, things going on in Washington on a federal level that might impact us as a city that we should be cognizant of.
Well, I'll comment on that. And hopefully, once again, we would see coming with sufficient time for collective interest to take action would be some, what's the term we've used before, the fiscal cliff or inability to pay the federal bills, which would certainly have a cascading effect on us as well as governments across the nation.
Did you have, given that you focus on this and you guys are lobbyists there, do you have any further insight that we should think about?
Council member, I'm a simple man. I just want the government to avoid a shutdown and all the funding bills to be approved.
Okay.
And have some see who our speaker is going to be and have
Okay,
some.
no problem. If there's
stability
nothing, no
there.
problem. Okay, let's close this item and go to item 2. So item 2 is
Chair Tanaka, I'm sorry, could we have a motion making the recommendation to forward these legislative guidelines to
point.
council,
Okay.
please?
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, sure.
And also noting the emergency services piece of that. So we will factor that into what we
Thank you.
bring forward to council. Thank you.
Does the clerk want to put this on the screen?
I apologize, Chair Tanaka, I did not hear you.
You what?
I didn't hear your request.
Oh, can you put, I think the mayor made a motion. If you could put that on the screen for us.
It's just a motion to recommend that the Policy and Services Committee recommend City Council approve 2024 federal and state legislative guidelines / legislative platform and shall include
Funding references for emergency services.
Thank you.
Are we ready for a vote?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Chair Tanaka,
Yes.
Mayor Ku,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, so let's close item 1 and go to item 2. Item 2 is the 2024 City Council priority setting process discussion recommendations. Does staff have a report that you guys like to give?
Committee members, I think we need a minute for our staff person who's not quite here.
Sorry, let's go to item 3. My apologies. Approval of Office of City Auditor's Risk Assessment and Audit Plan. Is the city auditor ready to go? Oh, or maybe I could also ask the mayor to turn your camera on so she can see you on your. Oh yeah, there you are. Okay,
Was having camera problems. Apologize for that.
no problem. Do you have a report that you'd like to go over?
Yes, we do. Thank you. Good evening. The city auditor's office has 3 items to report on this evening. The first being the results of the risk assessment and proposed audit plan. The second item will be the presentation of the wastewater plant agreement audit. And then the third is the investments audit. And so we have, we'll begin with the risk assessment. And we would like to thank all the parties involved. We had an excellent level of participation amongst the council members, the executive leadership team, as well as other members of management. And it was a very robust conversation, very thorough. And we were happy to get the level of participation that we did. And so I have with me this evening, Chimmy Perry, who is a manager who has presented projects to us in the past, and she is going to give us some background on the compilation of those results from interviews pertaining to that risk assessment. And then she will also walk through how we arrived at the proposed plan for consideration by the council.
Evening, I'm Chim Perry. I'm the internal audit manager with the Baker Tilly. I manage the risk assessment and prepare a proposed audit plan. So I'd like to present the results of our review. Before I get started, Madam Clerk, is it okay if I share my screen? I'm planning to go back and forth between the slides and then actual report.
Yes, one moment, please.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to mention to my colleague again that I think since it's small, if he has questions on the slide, just ask.
So I start from this screen. So what you see in the presentation on the screen is a summary of the introduction section of the report, packet page 25 for the risk assessment and 44 through 47 for the audit plan. Before presenting the results in the report, we would like to quickly point out a few key items. So the purpose of the OCA's risk assessment is to develop an internal audit plan that assigns internal audit resources to the activities that add the most value to the city of Palo Alto. Risk is defined as the possibility of an event or condition occurring that will have an impact on the ability of the organization to achieve its objectives. In the publication by the Institute of Internal Auditors Research Foundation. The risk assessment process involves identifying, measuring, and prioritizing risks associated with the audit universe. I will talk about the audit universe later, but it is a list of the specific departments, functions, processes, programs, and so on that can be subject to an audit. Risk assessment is not a one-size-fits-all process.
Actually, can I just say one thing? I don't know if you can talk more into your mic or speak a little bit louder because on here you're a little bit quiet.
Sorry. Risk assessment is not the one fit.
Or maybe can you clerk turn her up? Go ahead, please.
Okay. Risk assessment is not the one-size-fits-all process. The scope and complexity are affected by management's enterprise risk management efforts, organization risk monitoring function, and so on. To develop an annual audit plan, we consider not only the results of risk assessment, but also opportunities to add value, input from city council, prior audits and audit coverage, and timing and schedule. An approved audit plan may need to be amended in response to changes in the city's environment, such as organizational structure, operations, risk systems, and control during the year. So now I present the results of the risk assessment and the proposed audit plan. So the risk assessment approach section, package page 26, summarize the steps we took for this year's risk assessment. This is our third risk assessment. For the first year, we interviewed all council members and executive leadership team members. The second year risk assessment was meant to be an uptake activities with a smaller budget. So we interviewed several council members and ELT members, in addition to sending an online risk assessment survey to all ELT members and some additional members of management. There were 24 responses to our survey. This year, in the planning phase, we scheduled the interviews with 25 individuals consisting of all council members and ELT members, and distributed an online risk assessment survey to 51 directors and managers representing all three departments. The survey questions are included in Appendix C, packet page 37. In the information gathering phase, we review the key documents such as City Council priorities and progress report, the budget documents, annual comprehensive financial report, and other available information. We conducted all 25 interviews and received 47 responses to our survey. In the analysis phase, we analyzed the survey responses, inputs received from the interviews, and other data to score the audit universes based on the likelihood and impact of the potential adverse event. Likelihood is the possibility that an event will occur, and impact is the extent to which the event might affect an organization. The Appendix A, packet page 34, shows the audit universe. So each department, function, program is called auditable unit. So we have about a little over 90 auditable units, all listed in Appendix A. In Appendix B, in the packet page 36, shows various risk factors related to the likelihood and impact. For impact, we use the 3 risk factors: magnitude, customer and resident experience, and achievement of organizational goals. So for magnitude, we use the budgeted expenses and define the scope of 5 would be given to an auditable unit with $5 million or more. As you can see, we assign the amounts that show the score of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. For the customer and resident experience, an auditable unit with the direct impact on the health and safety received a score of 5. Auditable unit with the direct impact on the transparency received the score of 4. So similarly, we define the scores for 5 to 1. For the achievement of organization goals, we use the City Council priority and progress report, an auditable unit, and that directly relates to the City Council priority received a score of 5. And also we define that how directly relate to or indirectly supporting those priorities we assign the scores. So for the impact, we weighted so that it's small difference by magnitude to be 30%, other to 35% each. The total of the impact score, highest score would be 5. For the likelihood, we use the 5 risk factors: complexity, policy and procedures, regulatory compliance, monitoring, and specific risk. We asked direct questions related to the 5 factors in the survey and used the survey responses and additional information available in order to rate each auditable unit. For example, if a job is highly complex, miscommunication, errors, and injury are more likely to happen. So we would score a 5 or 4. And specific risks right here. We provided the council members and ELT members with a list of the risk categories and definitions before scheduled interviews to facilitate our conversation on risk. The list included 8 risk categories: strategic, financial, technology, human capital, operational, reputational, economic, and compliance. The risk areas listed in the survey covered these risk categories. Since the fraud risk should be always considered in internal auditing, we consider the typical fraud schemes identified in our profession, including cyber fraud schemes and other fraud schemes listed in the publication by Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So if an auditable unit is susceptible to fraud, it is given a score of 5 or 3. The risk factors are weighted as shown in the right column. So the impact has a total highest score of 5, likelihood has a highest score of 5, and then fraud has the highest score of 5. And we would multiply the likelihood impact, so it would have a 25 with the highest score plus fraud highest score of 5. So the highest total score would be 30. Then auditable units were ranked from the highest score to the lowest score. All auditable units with a score of 13 or above are listed in the report packet page 32. Before we look at the package page 32, we can take a very quick look at the survey results. Again, we received 47 responses out of 51, so that's 92% of response rate. So that was very good, and we really thank everybody who responded to the survey. So we asked survey participants to identify the changes they saw in the team or department over the past 12 months. New additional staff had the most count. This indicates that the city is hiring staff. This may indicate high employee turnover. Unfilled positions are the next highest count. This indicates that a city needs to hire staff in a fast pace, maybe faster pace. The last survey we had last year showed that a change in workload and workforce reduction had the highest score count. So there's a little change last year. I also like to point out the top risk areas selected by the survey participants. This thing included external risks such as citizens' demand, economy, regulatory, and also internal risk areas such as succession planning, human capital management, and human resources, and also procurement. The phone page. So,
Actually, Jamie, just to make sure this is clear. So this is from the employees of the city, right? The survey, correct?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
The risk assessment results include the key risk areas for each department. So we summarize the description of the department and also the key risk areas for each department. I'm not going to go detail here, but those risks are included in the list we're going to talk about in the following page. So all these are included in the list. So here's the overall risk scoring distribution. The results section also shows that overall, based on the department's division program from the budget documents and management feedback, we list the 96 auditable units in the audit universe. The chart in packet page 31 shows that out of the highest score of 30, 4 auditable units had a score of 20. And 16 auditable units had a score of more than 15 and less than 20. We defined auditable units with a score of 14 and above to be high risk areas, auditable units with a score of more than 9 and less than 14 to be moderate risk area, and auditable units with a score of below 9 to be low risk areas. So there were 27 high risk auditable units and 47 moderate risk areas and 22 low risk auditable areas. So auditable units with a score of 13 or more, which totaled 40 auditable units, are listed in packet page 32. So the high risk auditable units are highlighted in red in the right column, and then the yellow for moderate risk areas. So you see the planning and development services as the top of the list. Since we did the audit for the building and permit inspection process, we are planning to perform a follow-up review this year. And you will see that in our proposed audit plan later. Wastewater treatment as well is listed high. This is because we are using the inherent risks. So those inherent risks means that we are not considering the existing mitigating controls. Since we have tested many areas, we are focusing on the inherent risks. But when we select the proposed audit project, we consider whether it has been audited before or whether we tested the control and feel comfortable. So, but in this list, it's based on the inherent risk. The items included in our proposed audit plan, I'll point out right here in the list. So the ADA compliance, purchasing card program, also the emergency preparedness that shows a different under the different departments. That's multi-department activities. So the fire department, community services, emergency services. You see that same thing repeating, but it's under a different department. Also, recruitment and succession planning, right here for the HR, and PCI DSS compliance for the IT department, grant management, and also the utility billing showing up under the different function, the electric, gas, under the utility department. So we are going to propose the audit plan in the packet page 51. So in this table, we listed the proposed audits and preliminary audit objective. We did not intend to put the question mark here. We meant to be these the bullet points. We'll fix it later. Please note that in accordance with the internal audit professional standard, we will perform an engagement level risk assessment to adjust the scope and audit objectives based on the up-to-date and more accurate information. These are, again, preliminary audit objectives. The inquiry during the risk assessment does not go into real detail and can be updated by the time we start the audit. So that's the reason that we need another engagement risk assessment. As for the timeline, the timing and scheduling the audit need to be finalized after the approval of this audit plan. The remaining of the FY fiscal year 2024 is shown for the all audits flexible. So within this, we decide that we can audit it first or wait till later. The total cost within the FY 24 contract value shown in the signed agreement between the city and Baker Tilly. We prepared 3 task orders for the items in the table. They are identified with the X mark in the left column. So the public works, public safety building construction audit is ongoing with reviewing the monthly invoices. So we plan to continue till the end of the project, which is expected to be early next year. So our task order has ended in March 2024. At the end, we'll go back and review all the identified payment or other issues corrected or not. So that will be our final report. And we are currently conducting the audit, the procurement process, excluding the purchasing card program, as it is a separate process. So we are proposing this purchasing card program audit to be done next. We prepared the task order for this audit. Also, Public Works ADA compliance was included in the last approved audit plan, but the change to the audit plan was approved last year. So we are proposing this audit for this year. We prepared the task order for this one as well. Staffing has been noted as a risk area by many individuals and in survey results. So succession plan is important to make sure that highly qualified people in key leadership positions today and in the future. So we are proposing that audit as well. The city may be able to have more opportunities to receive grants. At this point, we heard that maybe necessary help's not needed or maybe decentralized. So there is unclear areas so that if the staffing, roles and responsibilities and processes are structured better, maybe the city have more opportunities to receive grants. So we think that it would be a good place to evaluate. for the emergency preparedness, this was, we heard some concern from the city council members, and also based on the city's environmental and goals identified the multiple departments in the budget documentation. It is critical to evaluate the emergency preparedness for the city. So that's the reason that we included here. We are proposing a review of utility billing due to customer-facing service, new system being implemented, and acceptability to the errors. So that's the reason we thought it would be a good idea to include here. The payment card industry data security standard, PCI DSS, is a widely accepted set of the policy and procedures intended to optimize the security of the credit, debit, and cash card transactions. So we have been reviewing the IT management, cybersecurity. So this will be the next area that we would like to take a look at. As explained in the staff report, we plan to perform follow-up activities, including verifying implementation of the corrective actions and testing of the effectiveness of the implemented controls. So we prepared the modified order for task 5 that relates to the follow-up activities to, in order to transfer the estimated cost on here to the task 5. So this is our presentation of the risk assessment results and proposed audit plan. Are there any questions, comments?
Maybe I just want to check to see if there's any members of the public who want to speak on this item.
No, Chair, we do not. We do not.
Okay, so we'll close public comment. Does my colleague have any questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. Yeah, so actually let's stay on this page 48 here. So I like that you guys are looking at the purchasing card program and trying to make sure that there's good internal controls. One thing I noticed quite often is that a lot of our bids from the city, we only get one bid. And I was wondering if that's something that the auditor's department can help us look at and trying to understand. Sometimes it's a solo bid because, you know, it's a rare service, but sometimes it's because, like I remember one project where it was like a downtown project for the pipeline. And what the vendor told me was that when it first went out to bid, it basically insisted that everyone had to work on weekends and holidays, all this kind of stuff. And then the city decided to do a direct award to a vendor, and so there was no bids. And then the city did a direct award where that was no longer the case. So I was wondering if the auditor's department can look into things like that and try to really understand not just the purchasing card, but just our procurement process in general. So that just to make sure that, you know, when we spend, you know, the hundreds of millions of dollars that we spend, that we are getting a good deal for the people here. So I don't know if the auditor could speak on that.
Yes, we can certainly include that in this scope. I would say that some of that would be included in the procurement audit that we have underway now, which we would anticipate being able to present those results at the next PNS meeting. But we will certainly take this particular scope into consideration as we create the plan for P-card, because that is definitely a relevant topic.
Okay, just out of curiosity, how much money flows through P-card? So our budget, total budget is about $1 billion. Do you know how much goes through the P-card right now?
I don't believe that we've confirmed that at this point.
Does anyone in staff know?
I can look that up. I would just like to note that the transactions that are running through the purchasing card program are not ones that are going through what you just identified, which is typically an IFB or RFP process. So it would be helpful if the auditor could help me understand a little bit further how looking at low bid pricing would be a part of the scope for P cards?
We would look at the scope of the way in which P cards are being used, and that would be to determine whether you are engaging in that activity or not. So it's not, we would not, in other words, go into the audit excluding anything necessarily until we are able to gain a proper understanding as to what the P card program consists of. So we may very well have already covered that in the procurement audit
Okay.
in terms of bids.
And then the second question for you is, how about around performance auditing, where, so for instance, like if you take a trash can here in Palo Alto, and now this we don't do it ourselves, but we go through a vendor. But I seem to recall that Mountain View's trash can for the same size and same frequency is like $34, and I think ours is like $47 or $48 for the same exact size. So I was wondering, if it's possible for the city auditor to do some kind of performance audits to see, what kind of bang for buck we're getting for our people here in our city versus, let's say, neighboring cities. And because I've asked this many times from staff, but it's always been a lot of pushback. So I was wondering if the auditors department can help us benchmark our city against other cities and just make sure that the people here are getting a good deal.
And that would be for certain types of expenses?
Expenses, like frequency of service. So maybe like how often can someone go to, the development center? Is it closed every other Friday, for instance? Or like maybe how long does it take to respond to emails, as an example? Or maybe I'm just kind of making stuff up right now, but basically just, I'm just trying to just measure like some performance metrics in terms of how good our service is. And based on some of our expenses, like I mentioned trash cans, right? Because that's one that you would think, our trash can should cost roughly the same as Mountain View, not, dramatically more, but it actually costs us dramatically more. So I think it would be interesting just to kind of measure the efficacy of our services compared to neighboring cities. But basically it's all kind of under umbrella of performance, kind of performance.
Key performance indicators?
Yeah, key performance indicators, or just trying to understand the performance of our service, right? Whether it's, responding to customer services issues, or whether it's, how much our services cost, or, how efficiently we deliver the service. So kind of stuff around there, right? So we can make sure that, so it's kind of like an audit. It's like a performance audit, essentially.
Yes, that could be accomplished under one audit across functions, or we could include key performance indicator objectives in all audits as they are occurring.
Yeah, maybe that's the right thing to do, so that we could check to see, whether it's customer service issues, or whether it's cost issues, or whether it's, the quality of the service that was delivered. Or so for instance, if someone wants to pull a permit to fix a water heater, right? How long does it take versus other cities, right? Stuff like that. Something where we can, something that like more customer facing, where people can, we can try to get a feel about, the delivery of our service versus other cities. So it's basically like an all-around performance audit. I think if you incorporate in everything, that would be great. I'm not sure if that's possible, but if you can, I think that would be a really good thing.
So we will work to identify those types of attributes and criteria that can be incorporated and provide a consistent view in certain areas that are relevant, as you've spoken of.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And speaking of customer service, and I've asked staff to do this, and I think they've done it for some departments, but maybe this is something that maybe the audit department can take up, which is really to we have the once-a-year survey, annual survey, which is certainly better than nothing. But I think it would be better to actually have a survey or a feedback mechanism that's regular, right? So like whenever services are rendered, we ask the question, how likely are you to recommend the service to someone else, right? It's called a net promoter score, and it's used, in basically every industry I know. And so, I don't know if it's possible to get that implemented through the audit department because I pushed staff to do this, but I have not been successful. So I don't know whether the audit departments can take this on and try to do this, and then of course benchmark. Because the nice thing about Net Promoter Scores is that there's Net Promoter Scores for everything, and it's easy to benchmark our city versus other cities.
Okay, we will take a look at that and provide you with some feedback.
Okay, great. Let's see. But otherwise, I think, it looks like you guys are kind of did your homework, really kind of tried to cover a lot of things. So I think that's great. I don't know if my colleague has any other comments or thoughts. Okay, so do we have to vote on something here? Let me see.
We did have a couple of task orders at the end of that plan such that we
Okay.
can get started
Okay.
pretty quickly.
What page is that on?
Let me skip the 10. This is the pocket page 50.
50. Okay. Okay. Okay, so let me just ask you this. For these task orders, does this cover some of the things that I talked about in terms of procurement efficiency, performance audits, customer service? Does it cover some of that stuff, or do we have to modify what you have here?
Well, what we have here initially is to approve the risk assessment results and related audit plan, as well as ADA. And so if we're going to identify KPIs within every scope of audit and within the objectives that we would have been performing, then we can incorporate that into the audit program itself for
Okay,
each audit as it comes up.
I'm just wondering whether the recommended motion here has to be modified at all, or whether it's sufficient as it is to cover some of the things I asked about.
Well, I think it's sufficient in terms of the title of the audit. We're being made aware of your request to ensure that we are also conducting performance measurement type
Okay.
testing to ensure that we're going to cover that consistently in every subsequent audit.
Okay. So basically, as is fine then, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. I'll make the motion then. We forward or we approve staff's recommendation then.
May I just ask if it's within the scope of the auditors described in the municipal code? If you're asking for KPIs and all that, it has to be within the Palo Alto Municipal Code as well as the charter
I think that's a question for the
auditor.
or city attorney maybe.
Well, what's being requested is nothing unusual or uncommon. We have absolutely attempted to provide some benchmarking feedback as well as to indicate the standards by which we are evaluating. And so what's being requested now is simply to ensure that we include that consistently in every audit from a performance standpoint and also from a benchmarking standpoint.
Okay. In that case, I'll second it.
Okay, does the clerk want to take the vote?
Mayor Ku,
Yes.
Chair Tanaka,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, should we go back to item 2 or should we keep going on with the auditor now? What's a better, the staff have any comment or the auditor have any comment? What do you guys want to do?
Well, we have 2 more reports
Okay.
that if we continue, then our items would be completed.
Okay. Okay. And where are your people? You're in Texas, right, or something like that, or Central Zone? I'm just trying to think who's.
Yes, we're both in the Central Time Zone.
Okay. Maybe then what we'll do is we'll just keep going with the auditor so that they could sign off earlier. Then if that's okay with the staff here.
We also have a consultant in the audience related to item 2.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's see. Does my colleague have a preference?
Well, I was just kind of looking at the Jimmy's and Adrian's time clock. I think they're like around 9:45 right now, or almost 10, right?
It's 10
Yeah,
p.m.
it's 10 p.m. Yeah.
We're fine, whichever you decide.
So I think if staff is okay, we'll just go through this really quickly. the audit so that they can get off. And so if you can do it really fast, that would be very helpful.
Okay, maybe we do that. So let's take the mayor's suggestion and yeah, and thank you staff for being flexible.
Yeah. So I like to present the results of the wastewater treatment plant agreement audit. What you see in the presentation on the screen is a summary of the introduction section of the report. That is packet page 67 through 69, where we describe the audit objectives, background information, scope, and methodology. The objectives of this audit were to determine whether adequate controls are in place and working effectively to ensure that costs related to the wastewater treatment plant are properly accounted for and allocated. Also to determine whether adequate controls are in place and working effectively to ensure the compliance with the contract and regulation. There are a few basic points I like to mention before we start reviewing the details in the report. There's a basic agreement between three cities: City of Palo Alto, City of Mountain View, and City of Los Altos, for acquisition, construction, and maintenance of the joint sewer system. It was executed in 1968. Based on the basic agreement, City of Palo Alto is the owner of the joint sewer system and the administrator of the basic agreement. The Public Works Department is responsible for operation and capital projects of the regional water quality control plan. The city has separate agreements in the east with the East Palo Alto Sanitary District, the town of Los Altos Hills, and Stanford to share the city's proportionate share of the cost. So it's kind of hard to follow. So I have the one table that might help. So here is the packet page 68. This shows that those three cities in the basic agreement, and also it shows that our share is shared with those three cities. So there are different numbers to be used for the cost being allocated, but this is the basic structure. There were 39 RWQCP contracts and amendments the city managed at the time we conducted this audit last year. So we reviewed all 30.
Jamie, I have a question for you on this page. So I see on the top there's two columns of numbers. There's one on the right and one on the left. Is that just like, I guess, what is the difference between the two columns?
Okay, so the right side, this column, it has a 200%. So that's the basic agreement by those three cities. And Palo Alto share 48% here. This is located among those four cities. So this is total 100%, and this total should be 48.2.
Oh, I see. And this is the cost or the revenue?
This is for the cost of the maintenance and operation costs.
But it says maintenance, operation cost,
And
and
also revenue.
So is this revenue? I guess I'm just trying to say, or is revenue and cost identical? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, this is how they allocate. So amount may vary, but how they allocate the cost or revenue.
Okay, so you're saying the cost and the revenue are identical percentages, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they.
Okay.
They
So if I was to read this, then 32.37% of the operating cost is paid by Palo Alto, and 32.37%, the same exact number, is the revenue. So revenue and costs are identical here, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
Wait, hold on a second. Can you show up the chart again? So I guess the thing that I don't understand then is Palo Alto is 32.37 on the cost and revenue, okay, which if they're the same, that kind of makes sense. But then a debt service, how come we're at 38.16% then?
So they use different allocation method. So this is how they decided. We did not go in detail to understand why we were looking at the contract, that's the way they all agreed to do it this way.
Okay, but hold on a second. So so 38. Can you scroll to see that the Palo Alto number is 32 something? Can you scroll up? Can you scroll the other way? Okay, so 32.37. So the debt service is 17.4% higher than the share for the revenue and cost. Shouldn't that be 32% like everything else? Why would that be higher?
That we did not go detail that level as that was an agreement among those cities.
Okay, because I don't know if staff has an explanation for this.
The agreements between the 6 partner agencies have a capacity entitlement. The debt service is an entitlement to capacity in the treatment plant, so it is a different expense share than the annual operating expense to use the facility. So each partner owns a different capacity allocation in the treatment plan, and they pay for their share, and how much they use of that varies from partner to partner. And then the annual operating expense and joint system revenue varies from year to year, and it's based on how much of that they used in that given year.
I see. Okay, so the reason why our debt service is higher is because we have a higher allocation of capacity, even though we don't use it.
Correct.
Okay, so given that pretty much all the cities around us have been growing way faster than we have as a city, does that make sense then for us to do that, or should we try to lower our capacity because it looks like I don't think we're using it right, and maybe we should do it based on our usage instead of some number that was set many years ago when our city was maybe larger relative to other cities.
Yeah, it's a fair question, and all the partners are using about half of their flow capacity allocation.
Okay.
So
everyone wants to get rid of their capacity.
Yeah, no one's right up at the limit of their capacity allocation. We're going to be engaging consultant services to do a cost of service analysis on both of these percentages. The way the annual flow capacity and strength capacity is determined, as well as the fixed capacity share to look at what other regional agencies are doing and see if there's a better way to do it. That consultant, we hope to have them on board perhaps by April and start work in June. And it's about 30 months of work. So we hope to complete that evaluation by end of 2026.
And how much is a debt service expenditure for Palo Alto?
I'm not really sure off the top of my head. Okay. It's about, right now, it's may say 10% of our budget, and it's going to increase to 15 to 25%.
Okay, so our total budget is about $1 billion. I mean, of our total budget or some other budget?
10% of the wastewater treatment fund budget.
Oh, okay. How much is that?
It's about 32 to 38 million.
Okay, so this is about $3 million then?
Right now.
Okay,
Correct.
so $3 million times 17%. So that's $500,000, right? Is that right?
If you say so. Yeah.
Well, I just did math there.
Okay.
But okay, so that seems like we're paying $500,000 more, and this happens every year, that we're paying $500,000 every year more because we So this seems like something we should definitely renegotiate, because it seems like it doesn't seem fair, given that we're not using it.
Right. That, and this last fiscal year, we used 35%. So 32% was the lowest we've used. We had used 40% many years ago, so it varies from year to year. And so we have to be careful, and that's why we want to get closer to, the study and have the consultants look at,
Well,
different ways.
In my mind, it should be dynamic, it should be based on usage, right? So if you use more, you should pay more. So if we use more, then we should pay more. But if we're using less, especially given our neighbors have grown so much, we should be paying less and they should be paying more.
Right.
And $500,000 is quite a bit of money. So it seems like something we should, so what's the plan to fix this?
Like I said, we're going to be engaging a consultant. We have a request for proposal out right now. The bids are due or proposals are due in February. We'll be evaluating that and bringing that selection of that consultant back to council in about April.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So as you know, the external financial auditors are reviewing, auditing the financial information. So we did not want to duplicate the process. So for this audit, we evaluate the internal controls by reviewing the documents, such as supporting documents for billing, reports and meeting minutes, showing the cost allocations and compliance monitoring. Now we are going to review the observation, recommendation, and the management responses in the report. The first finding in the packet page 72 about invoice and payment due dates. So out of the 26 invoices the city sent to the 5 partner agencies, we judgmentally selected the 8 invoices to include at least 1 invoice prepared for each quarter in our audit period, and also at least 1 invoice for each partner agency. We reviewed the selected invoices and supporting documentation, as well as the payment information against the billing and payment requirements in the agreement. Then we noted that we sent 6 out of 8 invoices to the partner agencies late. 1 payment was received late. As shown in the table 1, packet page 71, right here. The languages and grammars differ among RWQCP's agreements. So they are complicated to keep track. So the variety and inconsistency of the billing and payment requirements among multiple agreements may cause the agencies susceptible to non-compliance, errors, slow cash flows, and inefficiency. So we recommend the city management should evaluate all billing and payment requirements in the existing contract to determine whether there is any reason preventing the agencies from making the requirements and language in the contracts more consistent.
Jamie, sorry, I just want to make sure I understood you. So are you saying that people are paying us late?
There was only 1 late payment in our sample, but our so we are looking at the controls, how management is making sure that they catch those, and if there's a penalty to be charged, and then they are doing that. So from the control perspective, they don't have that kind of control process, and this inconsistency make it difficult for them to monitor and identify.
Okay, and how much money are we talking about here?
This is the area. So that was the, I believe, quarterly invoice. So it's pretty big amount. I don't have that number right now. I was like,
okay, I guess what would be interesting to know is how much money was that and how late was it? And then we could do the interest calculation, see how much interest we lost on that.
okay. That was over 100 days late.
Yeah. So maybe, 2%, right? 2%. So if we were, 100 days late on, $100, no big deal. But if it's, $10 million, then that's a big deal.
So then in the contract, for some late payments, the city can charge the penalty, but some of them, the city cannot charge a penalty because it's not included in the contracts. So if we saw that comment, we would calculate it. I believe this one did not have the ability to charge the penalty.
Well, like our neighboring cities like Mountain View is actually doing really, really well fiscally. So, like if they're late, they should really be paying us, right? Interest and the penalties. So totally with you on that. Which city was delinquent? You said 100 days. Like who was late to paying us?
So I was gonna bring up the specific names in this meeting. I'm sorry, I don't have the work paper open, so
Okay. Well, whoever it is, they should be paying us, and then we should charge them interest, and we should charge them penalties for not paying us, because we're on the edge ourselves, so we should collect quickly.
I can definitely let you know later when I pull the information. So we are recommending the city management to evaluate all the billing and payment requirements in the existing contracts to determine whether there's any reason preventing the agencies from making the requirements more consistent. If there's no reason preventing, then management should standardize the billing payment requirements for all WQP contracts in order to improve the efficiency of the billing and monitoring of the payments and ensure compliance with the requirements. Also, the city management should formalize internal controls and process to ensure timely submission of invoices with adequate supporting documents and the partner agency compliance with the payment requirements. So the management agrees and plans to modify existing partner agreements as other updates are made to clarify the billing frequency and ensure the standardization amongst all the partners with the target date of July 25th, 2025. For the second finding is on the package page 73 and about the.
Actually, I'd like to just make a comment. So I think in general, although this is just for the wastewater, but I think in general, and maybe staff's already doing this, but we should always try to collect our money on time and charge interest or penalties if people are late. So hopefully that's something that's happening throughout the city. I don't know if that's the plan. If not, we should do it. I don't know if staff has a response to that.
The primary other area where we would have receivables like this would be in utility billing. And in fact, the auditor has identified that as, I believe, part of the work plan. At the same time, quite frankly, we are very flexible in payments from our utility customers, in particular residential customers, recognizing we have a variety of individual circumstances. So perhaps contrary to what you just suggested, Chair, we do take a very soft approach in collecting those on those.
Well, I think that we should, if we are not doing this, we should probably note it somewhere so we know how much are we losing, so we know the magnitude of the issue.
Yeah, I was just going to note that we definitely have policy that defines the way that we handle that billing issue. And so just want to assure that this is not something that staff is doing unilaterally.
I mean, this is something that staff is tracking or not tracking?
I said it's something that staff is not doing unilaterally. I don't think that we are set up in a way that would have us calculate on a dynamic basis any cost associated with that flexible payment arrangements.
I don't know how much of this, do you guys have an idea of how much, what the order of magnitude Like, are we talking about like 100,000, talking about a million, 10 million? Like how much are we talking about here?
I don't have that information.
so
Again,
I-
that's really off topic from what we are discussing at this.
Okay, well, anyways, I think that's kind of an important thing, but I agree. Let's move on. Okay, why don't you keep going on there?
And the city has the industrial waste treatment program in which city staff members perform permitting, monitoring, and enforcing industrial waste discharge permits for the entire RWQCP service areas, except for the city of Mountain View. So the contracts require the partner agencies to update the industrial waste survey and provide the update annually to the city. Currently, the surveys are, at the time we were auditing, the surveys are updated informally for some partner agencies that is required by the contract. Without submitting an annual IWS, the industrial waste survey updates to the city, the partner agencies are non-compliant with the requirement in the agreement. So we recommend that city public works management obtain the necessary survey updates from all partner agencies. Then management evaluate the adequacy of the current informal survey updates practice for the effective administration and operation of the IWPP, and either enforce the current agreement requirements or amend the language in the contract as necessary to define the partner agency's responsibility. Management agrees. Starting in FY25, the city will send out a formal request to all partner agencies to review and approve edit the industrial waste surveys for their jurisdictions. Government will be evaluated for any needed revisions whenever the partner agreements are reopened for other reasons. Any comments or questions for this?
Not right now.
The third finding is on packet page 74 and about the compliance monitoring. So we noted that the timeliness of payments from the partner agencies is not being monitored, even though some contracts include a frequent payment clause that requires interest to be accrued on the unpaid balance. There are currently no policies and procedures to formalize the compliance monitoring process for the RWQCP contracts, and no centralized monitoring mechanisms to ensure all contract requirements are executed as intended. Keeping track of agreement requirements and monitoring compliance with 39 contracts and amendments are necessary for successful construction, operation, and maintenance of RWQCP due to these are old contracts with multiple amendments, as noted in the finding one, defining billing and payment requirements among agreements, importance of the compliance with regulation and permits, allocation, private agreements. It is important to identify compliance issues and resolve them in a timely manner. There are policy and procedures and formal monitoring mechanisms. The city cannot ensure that all contract requirements are met to successfully construct, operate, and maintain RW. So finding 3, we recommend that the city management should establish RWQCP policy and procedures to implement a formal monitoring mechanism that will ensure contract requirements are met. The policy and procedures should provide guidelines for appropriate actions such as communication, escalation, and contract amendments. Management agrees and has drafted an internal standard operating procedure to formally monitor tracking and receipt of payments from partner agencies. And we'll complete the reviews and distribution of the SOP by end of this month. That's the end of the presentation of this audit report.
Okay, great, thank you. Does my colleague have any questions, comments, thoughts?
Just thoughts. I appreciate the report, the audit, and I do see that there is an action plan in remedying some of the discoveries that our auditor has done. So, and I see also completion dates. So look forward for a report back if there is such when the time comes. And so thank you for the report.
Yeah, thank you guys for this. So in general, if I were to kind of sum what you guys are trying to do, you guys are basically trying to make sure that our partner agencies are paying us fairly, right? That means they're paying us when they're supposed to pay us. We're getting interest from them when they don't pay us properly or late. That although I guess you didn't necessarily talk about this explicitly, but you know we should probably make sure that we are paying only our fair share, and if not, we need to renegotiate and make sure that we're paying our fair share. Is that a fair characterization, or you guys, is there something more that you guys are saying today?
I believe that's the characterization. We just want to make sure that there's a good control in place to make sure about any cash flow issue or compliance issue can be remediated and successful operation of the plant.
Okay, well, one thing I would say that might be nice to have on this report, or just reports in general especially, is the order of magnitude we're talking about. Like how much are we, like how much money are we talking about? Are you talking about like, you know, $10? Are we talking about like a lot of money? So I guess that would be one that would be interesting just to know, like how the kind of the impact that this is having on us. Is that something I have a lot, there's a lot of things talked about, but and it doesn't seem like staff knows either, but it'd be really good to know, like, what is the, you know, order of magnitude of these issues?
Yes.
We should be able to capture that in when we conduct the follow-up activity.
Okay, great. Okay, okay, is there something for us to vote on this one? Is there a recommended motion for us?
Yes, city also recommends that the
Okay.
committee take the following action: approve the waste treatment agreement audit report and recommend the city council accept it.
Okay. Do you want to make the motion?
Sure, I'll just move the staff recommendation, the auditor's recommendation for city council's approval.
Yeah, I'll second it. And let's take it to, unless you want to speak on your motion.
No,
Okay,
thank
and then let's take it to vote.
Mayor
Oh,
Ku?
by the way, there's no public speakers on this either, right? Okay.
Correct. Mayor Ku?
Yes.
Chair Tanaka?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so we're on item 4. Does staff have a presentation for this?
I think this is item 5.
Oh, sorry, next one, item 5.
So I'd like to present the results of the investment management audit. What you see in the presentation on the screen is a summary of the introduction section of the report. That is packet page 86 or 88, where it describes the audit objectives, background information, scope, and methodology. The objectives of this review were to determine whether the adequate controls are in place and working technically to ensure the investments are properly managed in accordance with the investment policy. Also to assess the efficiency and effectiveness of the investment portfolio management against the best practice. There are basic points I'd like to mention before we start reviewing the details in the report. The city invests the idle cash pool from all sources and all funds in accordance with the California Government Code and the city investment policy. That is about $553 million as of June 30, 2022, and $570 million as of June 30, 2023. That excludes the funds held by the retirement system or trust. The Administrative Service Department is responsible for cash management and investment activities. Assistant Director of ASD is authorized to make all investment transactions and oversees the investment program. The Manager of Treasury, Debt Investment performs the day-to-day responsibilities. We evaluated the process and controls that safeguards the city's investment by reviewing the supporting documents for one sample of investments purchased and sold. We use the recommendations and guidelines from the California Debt and Investment Advisory Commission and the Government Finance Officers Association as best practice. Now we review the observations, recommendations, and management responses in the report. So that first finding is on the packet page 93. Okay. So it's about the segregation of duties and oversight of the investment activities. The Assistant Director of ASC oversees the function, has delegated the responsibility for managing the investment program to the manager, the treasury manager, and authorized him to enter into the parameters set in the city's investment policy. At the time of this audit in fiscal year 2023, there was no senior management analyst who performed any of these tasks under supervision of the manager. So the manager performed all the tasks related to the investment management. We reviewed 58 out of 850 purchased or sold investments and noted that none of the purchased investments, so the 45 out of 58 were the purchase investments. They had no evidence of approval. The final paperwork for each purchase is called memorandum for all 45 purchase investments was signed by the required authorized personnel 4 to 170 days after the trade date. That be average 65 days after the purchase date. Monthly review of the performance has not been performed by the ASC as described in the city's investment policy. Also, submission of a monthly report of investment transaction to the legislative bodies, to the city council, is required by the California government code. But this reporting requirement is not performed and it is not mentioned in the city's investment policy. So segregation of duties is the key internal control that disperses the responsibilities of the process to more than one individual. Without adequate segregation duties, the city has a higher risk of not preventing and detecting errors, fraudulent transactions in a timely manner. As a mitigating control, increased monitoring and oversight of the investment function are required. So we recommend to implement a formal process for review and approval of investment activities by the assistant director, and if required, the director prior to placing an order to buy or sell securities. Approval should be documented. Also, the city should reassess city's investment policy to ensure that the city will comply with the requirement to perform a monthly performance review described in its own policy And also, city should address the California government code requirement that requires submission of the monthly report of investment transaction to the city council. In addition, the city should continue the efforts to adjust the staffing of the investment function to assign responsibility to ensure adequate internal controls in place for prevention of the loss of the public funds arising from errors, including actions and fraud. The new staff members should be receiving the adequate training and the procedure manual to perform the job responsibilities. And the succession plan should be reviewed and updated for the key positions. Management agrees and has been developing a work plan to include a clear approval process. It is expected to be implemented in February 2024. Management also plans to implement a monthly reporting of investment transactions guided by the California government code in January 2024. Management will review and amend the work plan to ensure documented adequate training and procedure manuals for job responsibilities is available to other staff members by February 2024. The analyst assigned to the Treasury Division with creating a desk manual by February 2024. Any comments or questions?
So actually, let me first check to my colleague. Did you have any? Okay. So so we have about what was it, $500 million of assets or something like that?
Yes.
Okay. And how much debt do we have? How much debt are we paying right now as a city?
That'll be the staff question.
Anyone staff answer? Okay. I guess what I'm interested in is knowing is how much debt, and then we know how much cash we have, and I realize there's cash flow issues, but I'm just curious to know how much are we paying on that debt, and then it looks like in terms of how much we're earning on interest, it's actually quite low. It's like 1.2% or something like that. So, so if what we're paying on debt is much higher than what we're earning, then maybe we should pay down some of that debt, right? But well, of course, if the numbers are reversed, right? If we're earning a lot more than we're paying on our debt, then of course that's probably a good thing. So if someone can answer that, that'd be great. But the question I'm kind of curious is, because you could put your money in a CD now, and I realize this is maybe not apples to apples comparison here, but you could get like 5% interest now, and if you do corporates even higher. But you could do a CD, which is insured, right? And you could ladder it. And I guess why are we only getting 1% of 1.2? I forgot the exact number. Why is the interest rate so low?
Councilmember or Chair Tanaka, the city is governed by state law on what we are allowed to invest in, and our investment portfolio is also based on the investment policy that provides guidance on where and what percentage of our portfolio can be invested in different areas. The city does have CDs based on insurance. We don't purchase any CD over $250,000. And I will say for a portfolio of 500 million, we only have a certain percentage of it in CDs, and administratively, as you can imagine, 250,000 times 500 million would be a significant administrative oversight as well. So we do have them, but it is based on how much and what percentage of the portfolio can be invested.
So the administrative burden of splitting up that money, okay, I get that. I thought there were vehicles to actually handle that, where they could split it up for you. Because I had a similar situation with money at Silicon Valley Bank, where they kind of went belly up, or there was an issue for a while, and so I looked into it. There's actually services now that you could take this and they would actually invest it for you, so you don't have to administer each and every little CD yourself.
Sure. We manage our investment portfolio in-house with staff. I think it's a fair question for us, and we do continually look at efficiencies in the management of that investment portfolio. I also would caution what we may be able to do as private citizens with a bank such as Silicon Valley Bank or any other financing facility, I guess, entity out there. We have greater legal restrictions on our ability to do something like that and have others manage how our funds are invested. So we are making sure that we're doing our best to maximize our rate of return, but also making sure that we're doing it in alignment with state and our internal controls.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. It just seems like there's a pretty, I mean, I can understand if there's some, difference, but this is pretty dramatic, right? We're talking like 1.8 versus like you could get 5 or north of 5 right now. So I guess it seems to be lots of opportunity here.
Well, Mr. Tanaka, my name is Taran Narayan. I'm the manager of Treasury Debt Investments. If I may add one thing to the CD, we typically don't buy the CDs directly from the bank like individual does. We buy what we classify as a CUSIP number, so it's a secondary. So unlike a CD where you buy it personally from the bank, you have to hold it to the maturity or there's a penalty. The CDs we buy on the market has a secondary market. So if we ever needed to sell it for whatever reason, we can sell it prior to maturity. So that's one of the advantage. That mitigates some of the structuring that you were kind of mentioning, where you directly are dealing with the bank itself.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess, when interest rates were really low, it almost didn't matter, but interest rates are still relatively high. And so this kind of does matter. And we're talking about $500 million. So, every percentage point actually matters here. So, yeah, I guess I hadn't realized that there was such a gap between what we're getting and what the market is right now. I mean, it's not even half market, so it's just kind of surprising here.
So one thing you have to understand is that the current average portfolio rate is 2.33%. We have newer purchases that are bought at 6% or higher, and we have older purchases that were bought many years ago that might have 1 or 2%. So what you're looking at is an average composite. So it creates a level interest earnings over time. So our interest earning is not like a roller coaster where if we bought, say, a 6-month securities or 3-month securities, then we could have most of it in the 5%, 6% that you are mentioning. But then when the interest rates were very low for like over a decade, where similar securities would be earning 0.5%, then our entire portfolio would be at rock bottom. So we kind of laddered over time to create an average earnings that does well for the city, rather than trying to time it by doing short-term investments that would give us, 5 or 6% on the entire portfolio.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Okay. So that explains why the yields are really low, is because some of this was done perhaps during low interest rate periods, and so now we're stuck with it a little bit. But okay, I get that. And then was staff able to look up how much debt we have and how much we're paying on that?
We'll have to add it. I mean, obviously, we have a debt across the city in our utility funds, some state revolving loans in our wastewater treatment and general funds in terms of, and each of those operations have different dynamics. It's something we can add. I just, but if you give me a minute while you're discussing it, I can add it if there's a time to get back. So are you looking at the principal outstanding debt or what the annual debt service payments are in a given year?
Oh, I guess it's kind of interesting to know both. I mean, really, because what I'm curious is if our debt service percentage is much higher than what we're getting by, loaning out our money, basically buying CDs or whatever you guys are doing, then it would make sense for us to just pay down our debt, right? And so that's why I'm just curious to know what it is. Now I realize that there's cash flow issues, so that has to be factored in. But in general, all being equal, we would, if our debt service is much higher than what we're getting here, which is, I guess about 1.8 for the adopted budget, 1.8%, then we should be trying to, the best deal we can get is paying off our debt.
Well, you gotta understand, we have a debt policy and we only finance a long-term debt. So for example, the police building that's being built, that's $100 million commitment. So if we use cash to pay for it, basically, the general fund would be in negative territory. The entire reserves of the general fund would be wiped out and more.
Chair, if I might ask, are we still on topic on the purpose of this audit? Because I think we're kind of delving into finance part of it.
Well, I guess
So,
the title of this part here is Presentation of the Investment Management Audit Report. And so this to me seems like it's being covered because we're talking about investment management and the audit of it.
Yeah, but I think investment management as against the best practices. So looking at best practices and if this investment portfolio management is, I think the auditor assesses it based on efficiency and its effectiveness according to best practices. So I'm just wondering if we might be veering off a little bit off into actual numbers, which perhaps staff is not ready for.
When I read the title here, it says Investment Audit Report. It doesn't say Best Practices of Investment Audit Report or something more narrow.
Yeah, on page packet 84.
Well, I'm just talking about the title, which is I
Yeah,
think,
title, but there's also purpose of the audit that is also indicated here.
Well, I guess the city attorney could weigh in here. To me, this seems in scope, but
the-
you know, I don't actually know. So you tell me.
City auditor or attorney, yeah.
Good evening, Kyle Ariano, Chief Assistant City Attorney. I think that the questioning is fine within the scope, but do also want to be mindful of what staff is prepared to address in terms of the questions, and also what the auditor is prepared to address in terms of the scope of the work they performed. And so, you know, if we start getting too far afield, I just don't know how productive that would be. But it is within the scope of the agenda item.
And if I could add just one more perspective, and I appreciate City Attorney's Office, I'll say guidance as it relates to perhaps from a Brown Act perspective. The other is really noting the topic at hand. I would expect that the city auditor would be the focus of the Q&A, because this is really for the purpose of discussing their work. And then also just to remind the committee, you have one more item to cover this evening.
Good point. Okay, so anyways, the one thing I was just thinking about is the calculation there. So we have $500 million. If we earn just a couple percentage more, that's $10 million a year. So that pays for a lot of things. So it is, this is actually probably of all the things we're talking about tonight, probably the most substantive one. But okay, let's see. Okay, anyways, staff said they're going to get back to me on something. So let's proceed forward. Does the auditor have more that you would like to discuss?
Yes, the finding number 2 that we haven't discussed yet, so go quickly. It's on the packet page 96. It's about the supporting documents for investment activities. Again, we reviewed the 850 investment activities. Noted that the printout of spreadsheets or the version of the spreadsheet that supported the manager's investment decisions for the purchase investments are not available, as they are not clearly in the supporting documents for the wire payments or the memorandums. Also, no multiple quotations were obtained, and there was no documents such as evaluation of securities or the information obtained from the authorized brokers and dealers support the availability of a comparable security for any of the 45 purchased investments. Also, there were no supporting documents showing that new brokers and dealers met the city's criteria. Also, the 2 requirements in the city investment policy do not address the certain section of the California Government Code regarding that authorized brokers and dealers. Also, there was no documentation showing that brokers' acknowledgement of the applicable California government code sections and policy. So we recommend that the city administrative service division to implement a procedure to assemble and maintain adequate supporting documentation, such as the cash flow forecast, evaluation of the quotation for each investment transaction, able that approvers to review and approve them prior to purchase or sales, and to allow the oversight functions to evaluate the validity, accuracy, and compliance when needed. The city should update the city's investment policy to require the brokers and dealers who wish to sell and buy securities to the city to provide documentation showing that their financial condition and the relevant legislation, which are typical requirements for other cities' policies with that. The city should also require them to certify writing that the brokers and dealers review the applicable California government code sections and in the city's investment policy. An annual review should be also conducted to maintain the list of the authorized brokers and dealers. Management agrees and will formalize the review and oversight of the investment activities in the work plan that is expected to be implemented by January 2024. Also, management will update to include the requirements that brokers and dealers who wish to buy or sell securities to the city must provide documentation of their financial condition and relevant legislation by June 2024. This is the end of our presentation of the investment management audit report. So the city auditor recommends that the Policy and Service Committee take the following action. Approve the investment management audit report and recommend the city council accept the report.
Okay, did you have anything else? Otherwise, we'll start a discussion here. Okay, sounds like no. Any members of the public that want to speak?
No members of the public.
Okay, and any questions, comments from my colleague?
Just that I appreciate their audit. I think definitely when we're entrusted with the public's money, that we want to make sure that we follow the guidelines and best practices, as well as what state law requires us to do. So I also see the action plan involved and staff's agreement and concurrence and target dates in order to complete this. So as with the other audits, I look forward to hearing back when we have a report back on follow-up. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to concur. I think it seems like that the audit report really was trying to make sure that we are being safe with our money. And it seems like you guys covered the bases. It sounds good. It sounds like the staff agrees with that. That's great. I think the one thing that, and it's kind of dovetails what I said last time, which is, I think the one thing that would have been nice to have in this, and I don't know if it's still possible or maybe possible at some point soon, is just the it's more like around the performance of the money, right? So we owe it to the people of our city that we also are investing their money wisely, right? And so if we're able to get higher yields, and maybe we can't, right? Maybe Tun's right, maybe everything's laddered up as best we can, then it is what it is. But if there's opportunity for us to, like if we could get that this $500 million or so close to market, that's another $10 million extra for the city. So that's substantial. But okay, I don't know if Tarun or other people had numbers to report out before we vote on this.
I can just report out, Chair, on the debt figures that you had asked about.
Okay.
So in the city's 2023 ACFR, citywide long-term debt principal outstanding is 278 million. That's a component of our total liabilities, which is about $1 billion. And then in the annual budget, there's actually a summary of debt obligations, which not only identifies what the principal balances that remain for the debt issuances that are outstanding, but also has what the, the current portion is. And so in 2024's adopted budget, it's about $11 million across all funds. The majority of the debt, as Mr. Narayan had alluded to, is in your state water resources loans. So it's in your water quality control plant and your general fund from your things like public safety building.
Okay, and kind of like the high level number like I was interested in is, so what is the percentage that we're paying to service the debt versus the 1.8% that's, I guess, in our budget right now?
Sure, each debt issuance has a different, obviously, tick on it. Some of your larger areas are rather low. So for example, your public safety building issuance had a tick of about 2%. And if you look at the other larger areas, such as the state water resources loans, those are anywhere between 0 and 2.6.
0 and what?
2.6.
We have 0% interest and up to 2.6. Okay.
Mhm.
And does the city pay interest? I mean, do we pay taxes on interest that we get, or is that tax-free? Like, so when we earn interest on the CD, do we have to pay taxes on that, or is that, as a government, is that tax-free?
No, we do not pay taxes on our investment earnings.
Okay. Okay. So it would seem, just based on this high level analysis, that we're kind of a wash in some ways. Yeah, so maybe it's not that critical. But if we were really upside down, then we should definitely be paying it off. But it sounds like at a high level, we're about the same. I guess that gives us a little bit extra freedom too. So, okay, great. Okay, do you want to make a motion?
Sure, it sounds like ASD is on top of things, yeah? I'd like to move the city auditor's recommendation to approve the investment management audit report and recommend that the city council accept the report.
Okay, does the clerk want to take the vote here?
Mayor Ku,
Yes,
Chair Tanaka,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, so we're now on item 2. The staff have a presentation.
oh, could I just say thank you to Ms. Perry? Thank you for your presentation, and Ms. McCoy, thank you for getting it all done tonight.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't realize it's super late.
Thank you.
Actually, let me ask my colleague, do you want to take a break, or you're okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, let's power through and get it done.
Good evening, Chair Tanaka and Mayor Ku. Lupita Alamos, Assistant to the City Manager, and I'm here with Kylie Noze, Assistant City Manager, to talk about the 2024 City Council priority setting process. Next slide. Well, just briefly to go over the council priority setting process. It was established in 2012 with the purpose to focus the council and staff time, discussion, and decision-making. Our priorities are set annually at its council retreat, which is currently scheduled for the evening of January 29th. And as our guidelines state, our priority is defined by a topic that will receive particular, unusual, and significant attention during the year. And for reference, our 2023 council priorities are on this slide. There is a goal of no more than 3 priorities per year with a 3-year time limit. The protocols and procedures also call for council and community engagement. and as needed, the policy and services to make any recommendations about the process to council. And what we heard from council at the previous retreat and other ad hoc conversations was seeking more of a strategic approach and process to the retreat. So staff would like to present those options for your consideration tonight. Also just stated here, as a reminder, the council adopted a set of values last year that would help guide its decision-making, and those are listed here as well for reference. And as mentioned in the first slide, council feedback on priority recommendations. We have received so far 2 of 7 council member responses on recommendations for 2024 priorities. And both comments do confirm that council would like to keep the existing priorities. Also, as part of the engagement process, we have a community survey component through Open Town Hall, which we will have the results ready for the council before the retreat. And finally, to discuss those council retreat options tonight, I'm only going to go over the first 2 very briefly and then focus on option 3, which is really staff recommendation. So option 1 is our traditional process of identifying council priorities, including the objectives, which was new to the process. This involves the community survey and public comment, as well as council recommendations on new priorities. Option 2 is a more traditional strategic planning process. This is a longer term plan. Typically 3 to 5 years is what you'll see many other cities identify, but certainly could go longer. A strategic planning process could also take up to 6 months in planning. And this is because it includes a very robust stakeholder engagement and extensive planning process. And it also includes a significant more time of the council to develop such a plan. And that's because we'll be developing a vision, mission, strategic priorities, and implementation plan. And finally, option 3, which is what staff is recommending, really adds just a strategic element to option 1, as well as including our objectives. In this scenario, we would keep our existing practice of a 1-day retreat, and then focus on a deeper discussion of strategies required to advance each of the priority areas. We would, in this scenario, also keep our current priorities as a baseline, of which we would then discuss key strategic questions that could help ensure the city is appropriately organized and focused to advance those priorities. And just to reiterate those questions, because they would be a significant part of the retreat, outlined in your report as well, is we would ask the council to focus on how does the council envision its engagement in advancing each priority area? If involving ad hoc committees, are those specific goals to be assigned to each committee? Second question would be, what are the key community engagement needs to support and enhance the city's progress towards these goals? And finally, what resources, whether that be staff, council, financial, or other partners, or what other resources needed to achieve the council's vision for each priority? And of course, if the council would like to explore this option, we would also request that the council and the committee recommend a suspension or exemption to the council protocol and procedures to allow this kind of process. And with that, we'll just move to the staff recommendation, which is again to recommend that the council suspend the council procedures and protocols guidelines for the annual priority setting process and allow for option 3 of the retreat model. And with that, we'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Does the clerk have anyone who wants to speak?
No request to speak.
Okay, so we'll close public comment on this. Does my colleague have any thoughts, questions?
Yes, actually, why do we have to suspend the council protocols and procedures for this?
Yeah, if we go back to the second slide, I believe, the council protocols and procedures asks that the priorities be set annually. It also asks that, we follow this typical process of no more than 3, priorities. And by suspending those, then we would have more flexibility for, what the strategies that the council would like to focus on for that retreat.
So basically, the priorities that are set are not limited to 1 year as it is. We're kind of continuing it for 3, 4 years. Okay, I understand. So it's, in a sense, it's a longer term priority in order to accomplish them.
Yeah, and that was some of the feedback that we received at the retreat, was wanting to have a little bit more longevity. And through that discussion, there was also that talk of those values. So with that being the intent of the council discussion in this last retreat, this is why we would want to suspend that to allow for that longer time frame. if
And the
desired.
suspension is there a time period, or is this, are we going to change the protocols and the procedures and protocols?
I think the staff is suggesting we just suspend it for a one-time, understanding that if this is something that succeeds, the council may want to, what's the right word, formalize it more long-standing way in the future.
Thank you. So in doing this, with all the strategies and being strategic, it has to be at every level, right? So I think in doing this, we realize that not only council, but staff at each department level will have to do that. Also, at what point will we have enough, the right data sets and to see that, because we value accountability and analysis of, and to see if our incentives are aligned, when would we, at what point will we get a report back to make sure that what we have put out as priorities and the programs that's also involved it's actually working, and how do we measure it? So is that something that is going to be kind of considered and brought forward also so that we can consider?
Yeah, that's a great point. To date, based on last year or the current year as a baseline, we've really been focused on the completion of the objectives. So as Alamos pointed out, the 72 objectives, and we've been tracking their completion. So I think connecting that question with your earlier discussion, question may be whether there are KPIs, key performance indicators, that the council wants to assign to each one of the priorities that we would then be using to monitor how completion of the objectives actually move the needle, so to speak, on each one of the KPIs. So if that's part of what the committee would like us to include in the setup for the retreat, then I think staff can certainly incorporate that into the plan.
I think it'll be important to see how far we go and whether it's successful, but also at the same time, include options so that we can also adapt and pivot if we need to. So be nimble at it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think in trying to put that into motion, we might include some basic key performance indicators that staff would recommend, along with either some options, or certainly as a part of the council discussion, be open to what additional might be added and or considered down the road as work proceeds.
I also appreciate the big sheet that you provide us with the 72, but I don't know how much more bigger it can get, but but if I can read it, it would be really great, you know. So to the best of your ability, if it's readable. And then I just want to mention, you know, in the council values and annual council priorities, it says safeguard public trust through transparent practices and open communications. You know, based on our national survey that we have just done, it does show an increase in, you know, a slight, but still an increase in public trust and confidence. So I think that the more we openly communicate and be transparent and even engage with the general public, including the business sector, I think we'll continue on building and expanding this relationship with trust and confidence. I just want to say thank you for this. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. So, you know, my thoughts on this, I think the mayor and myself have been through this now 7 times. So one more time next year. And I think trying something new might be good because I for one, I'm a bit skeptical on how much impact 1-year priorities it does for the city. Because I think so much of what we do in the city is not discretionary, right? We got to pick up the trash, we got to power the lights, we got to do, you know, like 99% of the stuff we just got to do. There's no like discretion at all. So when we set these priorities, it also makes me wonder, like, you know, what are we really going to change? Because so much of our budget is locked down, so much of our staff's locked down. So, you know, maybe going a little bit longer term is good. The only flip side of that, of course, is that is we want to be responsive. So, yeah, you know, it's I'm glad to see different ideas coming about because I do think it's otherwise we spend a lot of time talking and not much actually happening from this. So I don't know if the staff shares the same concern about the effectiveness of our priority setting. And I like how staff is trying to connect it to action, which I think is a good attempt. But I think despite that, I think just the simple fact is that so much of the city is like just it's like a, you know, like a ocean liner. It's just set on a certain course, and it's really hard to change any of that, especially over just a short period of time. So yeah, I guess yeah, option 3 could be good. I mean, do you have a preference on which option you like?
Like you said, I was kind of agreeing with what you said, you know, to give it a try with option 3. You know, a lot of what we do already, we set the priority and it keeps on extending, and staff is doing the best that they can in order to catch up, you know. So let's try the option 3, the hybrid method, and then go from there.
Yeah, I guess we have to also think about how it aligns to the political process, right? Because most people are here like for 4 years or 8 years. So, yeah, so I almost wonder if it should be like a 2-year thing, right? Because the council's together as a whole for 2 years before it switches off, right? It may not, it may continue on, but like there's like 2 years guaranteed, right? 2 years where the same council for 2 years, every 2 years. So I wonder if it should be something like a 2-year thing. So the council as a whole for that 2 years could try to make a go of it. And then when a new council is reconstructed the year after, right? So another 2 years, right? Because that way because the 7 council members is the same 7 council members for the mayor will rotate, of course, but the council itself will be here for 2 years, right? The same people, right? So I wonder if we should do like a 2-year thing, right? Because that way for those 2 years, those council people can try and make a go of it, and it'll be consistent.
I'm open to that, although somewhere I was reading it's like 5 to 20 years. Where was that? Or did I read that wrong?
That was just a description of a typical strategic plan, which
Oh,
is not, that's not what we're recommending. But a strategic plan can be typically 3 to 5 years, but could be up to 20 years.
Yeah, I think what you're suggesting, I didn't think about that part. And if the newcomers want to continue it, then they can,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but and I'm sure you remind them why it was
Yeah.
done the way that it is. Yeah, so I think that would,
So
that
maybe
works.
maybe 2 years, because that way the council's together for 2 years and they could decide, and they have 2 years to make a go of it. That's twice as much time as what we had before, which was 1 year, which, looking back on it, is kind of ridiculous. Yeah, so maybe, and they only have to do it every other year. Maybe when people are newly elected and they could, have at it and try to, make an impact.
I was gonna say, why didn't you think of this like when we got reelected, you know?
I know, but you learn after going through 7 times, and really, we kind of realize what happens. So it's probably not gonna affect us per se, but maybe our the people that follow us will appreciate it maybe.
Right.
Okay.
And then also the questions that you've provided, if the council could get it earlier so they can start thinking about it and start, responding and having their responses to it. It does require some thinking, what they envision, what their, the purpose, the process, all of that.
So, one thing I was thinking is, we have the council feedback and priority recommendations. So theoretically, we have at least 2 people, maybe more, who say, let's keep what we have. So theoretically, if we keep what we have, then this is the first 2 years. And then, in 2025, when the new council gets elected, then they could do their 2-year thing, right? And then, yeah, so, and that way, all the decision makers are the same people. So and if they want to change it midstream because of, some sort of issue, they could do that, right? Yeah, okay. Does that make sense to staff too? Okay. So does the clerk want to just put that on the board here and then we can, oh, okay, well, no, to capture what we talked about?
Yeah, what changes would you like me to make?
So maybe what we try to do is have a 2-year priority setting window that's set on a new council. So new council years. So basically when a new council gets elected. And so it aligns to the political process. But I think one problem is if we set this stuff and it's not aligned to the political process, people aren't going to like it, right? So I think, if like on 2025, that will be a new council elected. And so they could set to 2 years. And of course, if they want to mess with it midstream, they could do that too, right?
Gotcha. Chair, wanted to just note that much of, I think, what you've just described would really work as a revision to the procedures and protocols handbook. And that will be coming back to the council in the February, potentially March timeframe. So you'll actually have the opportunity to test this out as the second year, basically, in late January with the priority setting session. Then in February, March, the council can talk about exactly what you just suggested, incorporating that into the handbook so that, on a go forward basis, we can, in fact, based on your study, your retreat in January, we may be able to come up with some suggested language for how to do exactly what you're describing here.
Okay. So,
I'm not so sure. Wait, let me see here. Amending the guidelines so that priorities.
So, yeah, what I might suggest is make it a second sentence or something to that effect that says, refer to staff. I'm sorry, I was just going to say everything you just deleted. There you go. Yes. So as a part of what we bring back to the council in February, March, we can include what you're talking about tonight and anything you want to add to this.
But as we go into the retreat, are the council members, the team going to know that this is planned as the second year and that it's going to move forward as 2-year kind of priority setting?
We would include that as a part of the staff report for the retreat. And perhaps to your point, make sure that gets out early enough that the council members can prepare.
okay, how do you want to modify this, if at all?
I think it looks fine now.
Okay.
Unless if
Okay, and just one small addition. Sorry, we're having a microphone distribution issue. I just wanted to add as well, so for the procedures and protocols, which is where this one, oh, there we go. Someone had two microphones. For the procedures and protocols, the council will have a few opportunities. So we'll remind council this upcoming Monday that is the next opportunity of around February or March. And then we can do the same thing in the memo for the actual retreat. And we'll flag some of these items. This item was not yet on the list when this committee discussed that previously, but we'll add that to the list. And that's part of the benefit of what the city council did this year and putting this whole procedure for your priority setting process into your guidelines so that as you want to make changes, it's a lot easier to do.
Thank you.
Okay, if you're good with it, maybe we could ask the clerk to,
I think
Okay.
there's a consultation with Madam Clerk and Mr. City Attorney.
or maybe we'll take a 5-minute break to let them work on it. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
they're almost done.
In fact, what I was thinking is maybe the same thing should happen on the boards and commissions too, right? Where they kind of, because actually they're appointed every year though. But we have kind of rotation. I have to think about it,
Mhm.
but it should be coincidental. Anyways, are you ready? Okay. Do you
Oh,
want?
so do you want to move it?
Oh yeah, I'll move this. You want a second?
Second,
Okay. Can you take the vote, please?
Mayor Ku,
yes.
Chair Tanaka.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. Okay, so we are done with
Thank
our
you.
final, yeah, thank you. We are done with our final item, and the last item on the agenda is future meetings and agendas. And so, actually, I do want, I was looking at tomorrow's agenda, and it looks so similar to today's agenda. And so I was wondering, do we really need to meet tomorrow, given that tomorrow's agenda is almost identical? In fact, I think it is identical to today's agenda.
Excellent observation. We noticed both meetings in the event that you did not cover all the items, but as you efficiently work through them this evening, we'll work with the clerk's office for cancellation of the meeting tomorrow.
Okay,
And then there are a few items that were not covered in this calendar year, so we will have things going into February and so on for next year. But overall, this committee covered most of the topics that came from the city council for this year.
okay. And so this is the last policy and services meeting, right? Okay, well, I want to thank the mayor for appointing me and thank you all staff for supporting this. I think we are done for this year's policy and services. So thank you guys.